Commander Vrelk stood on the bridge of the Concordance flagship Inevitable Dominion, his three eyes gleaming with what he assumed was intimidating authority, but actually looked more like a lizard that had just discovered tax evasion. He straightened his ceremonial armor, which clinked in a way that was supposed to sound menacing but mostly reminded everyone of a broken washing machine, and addressed his crew. "Fellow warriors of the Galactic Concordance," he began, his translator rendering his triumphant screech into something resembling English with a vaguely Eastern European accent. "Today, we celebrate our greatest victory. Earth has fallen. The humans, in their primitive wisdom, have recognized their inferiority and submitted without firing a single shot." The bridge crew erupted in cheers. Well, the Concordance equivalent of cheers, which sounded like a whale gargling marbles. Their resistance was, Vrelk paused for dramatic effect, non-existent. Their weapons unused. Their military absent. Clearly they understood that opposing the might of the Concordance would be futile. What Vrelk didn't mention, because it made him deeply uncomfortable, was that the humans hadn't just failed to resist. They'd welcomed the invasion fleet with open arms, complimentary fruit baskets, and a surprising number of enthusiastic, waving people. Several ships had been greeted by what appeared to be a marching band. Vrelk had been expecting war cries and nuclear weapons, not tubas and someone holding a sign that said, "Welcome space friends, please don't probe anyone." Down on Earth, in a hastily converted conference room in Geneva that still smelled faintly of yesterday's International Tax Summit, Jack Riley was pouring his fourth coffee of the morning. He was 37, looked 45 thanks to a decade in diplomatic service, and had the expression of a man who had seen too many PowerPoint presentations to be impressed by alien invasion fleets. "So," he said, addressing the small crowd of government officials who were very pointedly not panicking, "they think they've conquered us." "Technically," replied Ambassador Williams, a British woman with the patience of a saint and the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster, "they have landed and declared sovereignty over Earth. We just haven't corrected their assumption." Jack took a long sip of coffee. "Right, so we're doing the thing." "We're doing the thing," confirmed General Patterson, who was grinning like a man who'd just been dealt a royal flush. The thing, as it were, was humanity's plan, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. When Earth's governments had intercepted the Concordance's invasion plan 6 months earlier, thanks to alien FTL communications having the encryption strength of a birthday card, they'd faced a choice. Fight an advanced alien civilization in a war they'd probably lose, or do what humanity does best, be absolutely insufferable hosts. They'd chosen option 2. Jack checked his watch. "The liaison meeting is in 20 minutes. Anyone have the welcome packet?" Someone handed him a folder that was suspiciously thick. Jack flipped through it. Municipal parking regulations, zoning compliance forms, environmental impact assessments, and a questionnaire about dietary restrictions. Perfect. "You're really going to make them fill out paperwork?" asked a junior diplomat who still believed in things like dignity and straightforward communication. Jack smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Oh, we're going to make them fill out so much paperwork they'll beg us to conquer them instead." 20 minutes later, Jack stood in what was now designated as the Concordance Occupation Headquarters, which was really just a very nice hotel conference room with a hastily printed sign. Commander Vrelk swept in, his entourage of officers trailing behind him like a particularly militant conga line. "Human liaison," Vrelk announced, his translator making him sound like a disappointed game show host. "You will now receive the terms of your surrender." Jack extended his hand. "Jack Riley, Earth Diplomatic Corps. Welcome to Geneva, Commander. Can I get you some coffee? We have 17 varieties." Vrelk stared at the offered hand like it might explode. "I do not require your primitive stimulants." "Your loss. Now, before we discuss anything, I'm going to need you to fill out these forms." Jack produced the folder with the enthusiasm of a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, if that rabbit was actually a bureaucratic nightmare. "Forms? Just standard procedure. You've got your extraterrestrial arrival declaration, your spacecraft parking permit application, your weapons registration permit, and your atmospheric breathing license. We are your conquerors. We do not need licenses." Jack's smile widened. "Oh, absolutely, Commander. Totally understand." It's just that without the proper permits, we can't officially recognize your presence here, which means you'd technically be illegally parked, and the city tends to tow vehicles in violation of parking codes, even really big spaceship-shaped ones. Vrelk's three eyes blinked in sequence, like a traffic light having an existential crisis. You would impound our fleet. It's a 30,000 credit fine per ship plus storage fees. But hey, if you fill out the forms, we can probably waive most of that. There's a good coffee shop 2 blocks away if you need to think it over. In the depths of space aboard the inevitable Dominion, Officer Khress reviewed the day's reports with growing confusion. Her species prided itself on precision and order. Khress herself had never missed a deadline, never filed an incorrect form, never deviated from protocol in her 30 years of service. The current situation made no sense according to any military doctrine she'd studied. Commander Vrelk has been in the Geneva facility for 4 hours. She reported to Sub-Commander Trellix, a veteran of 12 conquest campaigns who was currently staring at a tablet someone had given him that appeared to be streaming something called a cooking show. Trellix responded, not looking up. Have you seen this, Khress? They're making something called chocolate. It requires 17 steps. 17. It's fascinating. Khress felt a small tremor of concern. Sir, should Commander Vrelk not have established complete control by now? Trellix finally looked up. Oh, he's probably just dealing with formalities. These primitive species always have some kind of ritual surrender ceremony. I'm sure it's fine. It was not fine. Commander Vrelk was on page 47 of the atmospheric breathing license application and was beginning to question his life choices. 3 days into the occupation, Commander Vrelk sat in his temporary headquarters, staring at a stack of paperwork that had somehow reproduced overnight like bureaucratic rabbits. He was beginning to suspect that humans had weaponized office supplies. Let me understand this correctly, he said to Jack, who was perched on the edge of a desk drinking what was probably his 9th coffee of the day. To authorize our troops to patrol the streets, we need a public assembly permit which requires an environmental impact study, which requires a historical preservation review, because some of your buildings are old, which requires approval from 17 different municipal departments. 18, actually, Jack corrected cheerfully. You forgot Parks and Recreation. They oversee any activities within 500 meters of designated green spaces. Vrelk's middle eye twitched. We have conquered 473 worlds. Never, not once, has anyone mentioned Parks and Recreation. Well, you've never conquered Earth before. Coffee? Jack offered the pot. No, yes, fine. Vrelk accepted a cup with one of his smaller manipulator arms. He took a sip and immediately understood why humans were so insufferable. The beverage was liquid motivation mixed with bitter determination. What is this? Colombian dark roast. It's a good starter coffee. Once you build up tolerance, I'll introduce you to espresso. I do not need tolerance. I need to establish military control. Right, absolutely. And you can totally do that, just as soon as you get your occupying force business license. It's just like a regular business license, except with more paperwork because weapons are involved. Oh, and you'll need insurance. Insurance? In case your troops damage any property during your whole conquering thing. It's standard. I've got the forms right here. Vrelk looked at the new stack of documents Jack produced and seriously considered returning to space. Maybe conquering Earth wasn't worth it. Maybe they should just glass the planet from orbit and be done with it. Except High Command had been very clear that Earth needed to be taken intact for its strategic resources, which apparently included something called rare earth metals and a beverage called vodka that the High Council had become disturbingly interested in after intercepting a human transmission. Meanwhile, in downtown Geneva, Sub-Commander Trellix was having what humans would call a religious experience. He'd wandered away from the landing zone 3 hours ago, following the smell of something that made his sensory organs sing, and had ended up at a small restaurant with a sign that said Pizza Palace. The human proprietor, a stout man named Giovanni, with the confidence of someone who'd never met a problem that couldn't be solved with cheese, had taken one look at Trellix's confused alien face and decided to perform an act of culinary evangelism. You, my friend, have never lived, Giovanni declared, sliding a steaming slice of pepperoni pizza across the counter. This will change your life. Trellix, who'd spent 30 years eating standard military rations that tasted like recycled disappointment, took a tentative bite. His translator started making sounds it had never made before, a sort of surprised humming that roughly translated to, "Where has this been all my life, and why did no one tell me food could taste like happiness?" "Good, yes?" Giovanni grinned. Trellix consumed the rest of the slice in 4 large bites. "I need more of this. I need this always. How much for your planet's entire supply?" "Slow down there, space buddy. You can't buy all the pizza, but you can come back tomorrow. We make it fresh every day." And just like that, the Concordance lost one of its most decorated warriors to Italian cuisine. Back at headquarters, Officer Khress was experiencing her own crisis. She'd been assigned to review Earth's legal and regulatory framework, to identify potential points of resistance or non-compliance. What she'd found instead was a labyrinthine nightmare of contradictory laws, exceptions to exceptions, and something called a grandfather clause that seemed to mean old things didn't have to follow new rules. Except sometimes they did, depending on factors that made no logical sense. She'd been working for 8 hours straight when Jack walked by with his perpetual coffee cup. "How's it going?" he asked. Khress looked up with all 4 of her eyes, which her species did when experiencing extreme stress. "Your legal system is chaos." "Yep. There are 17 different taxation categories, none of which align with any rational organizational structure." "Sounds about right. I found 3 laws that directly contradict each other, and all are currently in force." "That's actually pretty good. Usually there's more than 3. Jack took a sip of coffee. "You want some help with that?" Khress hesitated. Accepting help from a conquered species violated about 40 different protocols, but she was drowning in paperwork, and protocols didn't specify what to do when the conquered species seemed more organized than the conquerors. "What kind of help?" "Well, I could introduce you to Linda from accounting. She's been handling international tax law for 20 years. She's terrifying, but she knows where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically, probably." "I do not understand why you are helping your occupiers." Jack's expression shifted to something almost sincere. "Look, Officer Khress, right? You seem like someone who appreciates order and getting things done properly. The way I see it, if you're going to occupy Earth, you might as well do it correctly. Otherwise, we'll all just be drowning in improperly filed forms, and nobody wants that." It made a strange kind of sense. Khress found herself nodding. "Very well. I will meet this Linda from accounting." "Great. Fair warning. She doesn't drink coffee. She drinks something called green tea, and she will judge you for your filing methods. Don't take it personally." Later that evening, Commander Vrelk called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. They gathered in what was supposed to be an imposing command center, but had been set up in a hotel banquet room because the permits for their preferred military facility were still pending. "Status report," Vrelk demanded, trying to reassert some authority. Officer Khress stood, datapad in hand. "We have successfully filed 73% of the required documentation for legal occupation status. However, I've discovered that we also need health and safety certifications for all personnel, which requires medical evaluations from Earth-certified physicians. We have our own physicians, who are not certified to practice medicine on Earth. There are forms." Vrelk's eye twitch had become permanent. "Trellix, what about establishing resource extraction operations?" Sub-Commander Trellix, who'd spent the entire meeting thinking about pizza, snapped to attention. "Ah, yes, resources. Well, I've been conducting reconnaissance on local food supplies, and I believe we should prioritize securing something called wheat, tomatoes, and mozzarella cheese. Those are not strategic resources." "Have you tried pizza, Commander?" "No, I have not tried pizza. We are here to extract rare minerals and establish tribute systems, not sample local cuisine." "You're lost, sir." Vrelk turned to his intelligence officer, a nervous individual named Plex who looked like a mantis shrimp had gone through a goth phase. "Please tell me you have better news." Plex consulted his notes. "The humans have been extremely cooperative, almost suspiciously so. They've provided us with maps, resource surveys, and detailed briefings on Earth's governmental structure. However, sir, I'm concerned about the Wi-Fi." "The what?" "It's their wireless communication network. It's everywhere, and it's interfering with our neural interfaces. Several troops have reported headaches and what they describe as an overwhelming urge to watch something called cat videos. This is a weapon? I don't think so, sir. I think it's just poor network architecture, but it's definitely affecting our equipment. Jack, who'd been invited to the meeting as a liaison and was absolutely not taking notes for later mockery, raised his hand. I can help with that. We've got some RF shielding solutions that should reduce the interference. I'll have the forms sent over. Of course there are forms. Vrelk muttered into his coffee, which he'd started drinking regularly because it was the only thing that made the paperwork tolerable. Month 3 of the occupation was when Commander Vrelk truly began to understand that something had gone terribly wrong. He stood at the window of his headquarters office, watching his troops mill around downtown Geneva, and realized with growing horror that at least half of them were carrying shopping bags. Shopping bags. His warriors, the elite forces of the Galactic Concordance, had discovered outlet malls. "Sir?" Officer Khress entered, holding a tablet and wearing what appeared to be a new scarf, a very fashionable scarf, in colors that complemented her exoskeleton. "Officer Khress," Vrelk said slowly, "why are you wearing human clothing accessories?" She touched the scarf self-consciously. "It's practical, sir. Earth temperatures are variable, and this provides thermal regulation while remaining professional." "Where did you get it?" "A shop called Zara. They were having a sale." Vrelk closed all 3 eyes and counted to 10 in 4 different languages. When he opened them again, reality had not improved. Report. Overall occupation efficiency is down 47%. Troop morale is at an all-time high, which is concerning given that we're supposed to be conducting a military operation, not a vacation. I've identified several factors contributing to the situation. She tapped her tablet, bringing up a presentation that Vrelk suspected she'd learned to make from humans, because it had way too many animated transitions. First, entertainment media. 63% of our forces are now regular consumers of what humans call streaming services. The most popular appears to be something called the Great British Baking Show. Is it teaching them human military tactics? No, sir. It's about making cakes. Why are my soldiers watching programs about cakes? I don't know, sir. I also don't know why I've watched 4 seasons. It's oddly compelling. Vrelk made a note to review Khress's psychological evaluation. Continue. Second, local cuisine. Subcommander Trellix has been absent from duty for 72% of his scheduled hours. When questioned, he claims to be conducting cultural reconnaissance. And what is he actually doing? Operating a food distribution vehicle he calls a food truck. He's selling something called tacos filled with our standard ration proteins. Humans appear to love it. He's made the equivalent of 17,000 credits in 3 weeks. He's selling our military rations? Technically, he's combining them with local ingredients and charging a premium. I've reviewed the business model, sir. It's actually quite profitable. Vrelk felt a stress headache forming in his primary cranial lobe. Please tell me the rest of the troops are maintaining military discipline. Khress advanced her presentation. Third issue, and this is where things get complicated. We've had 42 requests from personnel asking to extend their deployment on Earth. 17 have applied for what humans call permanent residency. 5 have started romantic relationships with locals. That's against 347 regulations. Yes, sir, I've informed them. They've filed appeals citing cultural exchange protocols and arguing that the regulations do not specifically address occupying forces developing emotional attachments to conquered populations. Because no one thought we'd need that rule. In fairness, sir, most species we conquer try to kill us, not befriend us. The legal framework isn't designed for this scenario. Vrelk sat down heavily. Where are the requests for permanent residency coming from? Mostly troops stationed in coastal regions. Apparently, humans have a recreational activity called surfing that several of our personnel have become obsessed with. Also, something called wine tasting in regions with vineyards. Our troops are surfing and wine tasting. We're doomed. Jack chose that moment to enter because he had an uncanny ability to show up whenever things were at their worst for the aliens and best for human entertainment. Morning, Commander. How's the occupation going? Mr. Riley, Vrelk said with the tone of a man barely holding on to sanity. What have you done to my forces? Me? Nothing. I just gave them some tourist maps and suggestions for good restaurants. They did the rest themselves. This is deliberate. You are deliberately undermining military cohesion. Jack's expression was pure innocence. Commander, we're the conquered people here. We're just trying to be hospitable. If your troops happen to discover that Earth has some nice amenities, well, that's just good customer service. We are not customers. We are occupiers. Sure, but you're also breathing our air, eating our food, and living in our cities. Might as well enjoy it, right? He paused. Speaking of which, Officer Khress, there's a karaoke bar opening tonight near your quarters. Very popular. You should check it out. Khress's eyes lit up in a way that made Vrelk deeply nervous. Karaoke? It's like group singing but with emotional catharsis. Very therapeutic. They've got a great song list. I should investigate this, Khress said, with the determination of someone who'd just found a new hobby. For intelligence purposes. After she left, Vrelk glared at Jack. You are corrupting my officers. I'm introducing them to Earth culture. There's a difference. The outcome is the same. My second-in-command runs a taco truck. My intelligence officer watches baking shows. My troops are surfing. How am I supposed to maintain an occupation when my forces would rather be shopping than patrolling? Jack took a sip of his ever-present coffee. That sounds like a you problem, Commander. That night, at the karaoke bar Jack had recommended, Officer Khress stepped onto the small stage with the nervous energy of someone about to do something completely out of character. Her species didn't do music, not really. Their communication was too precise, too literal for the emotional messiness of songs. But she'd been on Earth for 3 months, drowning in paperwork and regulations, and the strange human custom of singing your feelings at strangers in bars had begun to make a weird kind of sense. The music started. Khress recognized it from the radio that played in the office. A power ballad from the 1980s. She opened her vocal synthesizer and began to sing Total Eclipse of the Heart, in a voice that was part alien harmonics and part desperate emotion. The crowd of humans and a surprising number of her fellow Concordance soldiers went wild. On the flagship Inevitable Dominion, orbiting Earth at a safe distance, a junior officer was reviewing intelligence reports when he noticed an irregularity. Multiple ships in the fleet were redirecting their communication arrays toward Earth's entertainment broadcasts. At first, he thought it was a reconnaissance operation. Then he realized they were just watching Netflix. He filed a report. His commanding officer, already suspicious about the Earth situation after 3 months of increasingly bizarre updates from Commander Vrelk, decided it was time to escalate to High Command. High Command decided it was time to send in the big guns. They called Warmaster Draxon. Warmaster Draxon stood on the bridge of the absolute certainty, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen, and felt nothing but cold professional disdain. He'd conquered 40 star systems in a career spanning 60 years. He'd broken species that actually fought back, crushed rebellions, and established order in sectors that had known only chaos. By all accounts, Earth should have been the easiest assignment of his career. Instead, it was apparently a disaster wrapped in bureaucracy and topped with pizza. The preliminary reports from Commander Vrelk's forces read like a fever dream. Occupation efficiency below 50%. Troops engaging in commercial activities. Officers developing emotional attachments to conquered populations. Khress, who'd been one of the most promising young officers in the fleet, was now apparently a karaoke enthusiast with a side interest in human fashion. It was embarrassing. It was unprofessional. It was going to end immediately. Prepare my shuttle, Draxon ordered. Full military escort. And someone tell Commander Vrelk I'm coming whether he's ready or not. 30 minutes later, Draxon's shuttle descended on Geneva, with the kind of aggressive flight pattern that made civilians duck and military personnel snap to attention. He emerged from the craft in his full Warmaster regalia, which looked like someone had combined a suit of armor with a nightmare and added spikes for emphasis. Commander Vrelk met him at the landing zone, looking noticeably less impressive in his now coffee-stained ceremonial uniform. Warmaster Draxon, sir, welcome to Earth. If you'll just fill out these arrival forms. No, sir. I will not be filling out forms, Commander. I will be fixing your catastrophic failure to maintain basic military discipline. Draxon swept past him, his entourage of actually intimidating soldiers following like a well-oiled machine. "Where are your troops?" "Well, sir, some are on patrol, some are handling administrative duties, and I believe several are at Sub-Commander Trellix's food truck because he's testing a new fusion taco recipe." "Food truck?" Draxon's voice could have frozen helium. "One of my most decorated combat veterans is operating a food truck." "It's actually very successful, sir. He's cleared over 30,000 credits in profit." "I don't care if he's cleared 1,000,000 credits. He's a soldier, not an entrepreneur." Draxon stopped walking and turned to face Vrelk. "Where is your command center?" "4th floor, conference room B. We're still waiting on the permits for a proper military facility, but the hotel has been very accommodating. Take me there now." The elevator ride was silent except for the soft jazz playing over the speakers, which Draxon found personally offensive. When they reached the command center, he surveyed the space with the expression of someone inspecting a crime scene. "This is a hotel conference room." "Yes, sir." "With a coffee station?" "The humans provided it. It seemed rude to refuse." "And that," Draxon pointed to a wall, "is a motivational poster with a cat hanging from a tree branch." "That appeared mysteriously. We're not sure how." Draxon closed his eyes and reminded himself that executing subordinates was frowned upon by High Command's new sensitivity protocols. "Call all senior officers, immediate meeting, and find me this human liaison I keep hearing about." Jack Riley was in the middle of his 11th coffee when he got the summons to meet the Warmaster. He'd been expecting this. Earth's intelligence agencies had picked up the absolute certainties approach 3 days ago, and they'd all agreed that Draxon's arrival meant the easy part was over. Now came the part where they had to convince a genuinely competent military commander that occupying Earth was a terrible idea. Jack straightened his tie, grabbed his briefcase, and headed to the conference room with the calm confidence of a man who'd prepared for this exact scenario. Draxon was everything the reports had suggested. Tall, intimidating, covered in what looked like actual battle scars, and completely free of the softening influence that had affected Vrelk's forces. His eyes, all 4 of them, tracked Jack with predatory precision as he entered. "Mr. Riley," Draxon said. His translator gave him a voice like gravel being crushed by a tank. "I'm told you're responsible for the current situation. I'm just a liaison, Warmaster. I help facilitate communication between our peoples. You've facilitated my forces becoming soft, undisciplined, and commercially entrepreneurial. Is commercial entrepreneurship a crime now? Because that's going to be awkward for about half the galaxy." Draxon leaned forward. "Let me be clear, human. I am not Commander Vrelk. I don't drink your coffee. I don't fill out your forms. I don't care about permits or paperwork or pizza. I am here to restore order, and if that requires harsh measures, I will not hesitate." Jack met his gaze without flinching. "Harsh measures? You mean violence, if necessary. Against whom? The civilians who've been housing and feeding your troops? The businesses that have been paying Sub-Commander Trellix for his tacos? The karaoke bar where Officer Khress has apparently found her calling?" Jack leaned back in his chair. "You want to crack down on the occupation, but the problem is your forces don't want to be cracked down on. They're happy here. Happiness is irrelevant. Discipline is paramount." "Is it, though?" Jack pulled out his tablet. "Because I've got data that suggests your forces are actually more effective now than when they arrived. Morale is up. Psychological health incidents are down. Even combat readiness scores have improved because your troops are better rested and less stressed. They're supposed to be stressed. They're occupying a hostile planet. Except Earth isn't hostile. That's your whole problem, Warmaster. You came here expecting a fight, and you got hospitality instead." Jack smiled. "And you can't shoot your way out of hospitality." Draxon stood abruptly, his full height making him tower over the seated human. "Watch me." He turned to his assembled officers. "Effective immediately, all Earth-based contraband is confiscated. No more streaming services, no more local cuisine, no more fraternization with locals. All personnel are restricted to base except for authorized patrols. Officer Khress, shut down Sub-Commander Trellix's food truck and recall him to duty. This occupation is now operating under full military protocols." Khress, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Sir, that will cause significant morale issues. Morale issues are preferable to the current farce. We are the Galactic Concordance. We don't make tacos. We conquer worlds. Draxon's glare swept the room. And Mr. Riley, your services as a liaison are no longer required. From this point forward, all communication between Earth and the Concordance will go through official military channels only. Jack gathered his things slowly. If that's what you want, Warmaster. But I should mention, you're going to need to submit a formal request to dissolve our liaison agreement. It's a simple process. Just 17 forms and approval from the Interspecies Relations Committee. I don't need approval. I'm declaring martial law. Sure, you can do that. You'll just need to fill out the martial law declaration form, which requires, get out. Jack left, but his smile suggested he knew something Draxon didn't. Draxon turned to his officers. The situation on Earth ends now. We will restore proper military order, establish tribute systems, and remind these humans exactly who conquered whom. Are there any questions? There were no questions, but several officers exchanged glances that suggested they were thinking about tacos. The crackdown lasted exactly 4 days before Warmaster Draxon realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Not because humans fought back with weapons or violence. They didn't need to. They fought back with something far more insidious. Passive resistance and weaponized bureaucracy. Day 1 of martial law saw Concordance troops attempting to enforce curfews and movement restrictions. The humans complied immediately, which should have been Draxon's first warning. They simply stopped going to work. All of them. Every factory, every service, every restaurant and shop and utility service just stopped operating because, as they politely explained, the curfew made it impossible for workers to reach their jobs. Geneva's power grid started experiencing rolling blackouts. Not because of sabotage, but because the human technicians couldn't get to the power plants during restricted hours. The water treatment facilities slowed to minimal operations. Garbage collection stopped entirely. Day 2, the food supply chain collapsed. Not violently, just quietly ground to a halt because truckers couldn't make deliveries under martial law restrictions. And the Concordance forces discovered they'd been depending entirely on Earth's existing infrastructure to feed their occupation. By day 3, Draxon's troops were hungry. The headquarters smelled like rotting garbage, and someone had filed a formal complaint about the lack of running water with the Interspecies Relations Committee. Day 4, Jack Riley walked back into the command center like he'd never left, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Morning, Warmaster," he said cheerfully. "Heard you were having some logistical difficulties. Brought you a coffee." Draxon, who had not slept in 48 hours and was starting to understand why Vrelk had developed a caffeine dependency, accepted the cup. "What do you want?" "To talk. Really talk. No more games." Jack sat down uninvited. "See, here's the thing, Draxon. You're right that we didn't fight back, but you're wrong about why. Enlighten me." "We didn't fight because we knew we didn't have to. Earth's governments intercepted your invasion plan 6 months before you arrived. We read your entire strategic assessment, your resource extraction plans, everything. And we ran the numbers." Draxon's combat instincts prickled. "Continue." "A military resistance would have cost millions of lives and accomplished nothing. You'd have won eventually. So we did what humans do best. We adapted. We chose a different kind of resistance. One you weren't trained for and couldn't counter." Jack leaned forward. "We weaponized our culture, Warmaster." "That's absurd." "Is it? Every welcome basket, every form, every friendly gesture was designed to make you think you'd won without actually giving you control. We buried you in bureaucracy to slow you down. We introduced your troops to Earth's amenities to make them question whether occupation was worth it. We didn't fight you. We absorbed you. We still have superior weapons, superior technology." "About that." Jack pulled out a small device from his pocket. "Recognize this?" Draxon's 4 eyes widened. "That's an FTL communicator, military-grade encryption." Was military-grade. Now it's a souvenir from a garage in Seoul where 3 college students reverse-engineered it in 6 weeks using parts from a hardware store. Jack set it on the table. "While you were filling out forms and eating tacos, humans were taking apart every piece of technology you brought here and figuring out how it works. We've got working prototypes of your shield generators, your power systems, even your jump drives. That's impossible. It's humanity. We steal, copy, and improve. It's kind of our thing. Jack pulled out his tablet. Want to see something really fun? This is Earth's current defensive capability. He showed Draxon a document marked Top Secret that was apparently not very secret anymore. It detailed a crash program of reverse engineering, weapons development, and defensive systems that had been running parallel to the occupation. Humanity hadn't been conquered. They'd been buying time. 3 more months, Jack said quietly, and we'd have had functional warships based on your technology. 6 months, and we'd have matched your fleet capabilities. A year, and we'd have been building better ships than you. You didn't conquer us, Draxon. You handed us the keys to galactic-level technology and expected us to stay primitive. Draxon felt something he rarely experienced, genuine concern. You're bluffing. Am I? Let me tell you what happened while you were cracking down. Every human who'd been cooperating with your occupation stopped. Every engineer who'd been helping maintain your ships found suddenly urgent personal business. Every supplier who'd been providing food and services discovered paperwork errors that would take weeks to fix. You tried to occupy Earth by force, and you discovered that force doesn't work when your enemy isn't fighting back. They're just not helping. And without our help, Warmaster, you're stuck. Draxon processed this information with the analytical mind that had won him 40 campaigns. Every word Jack said aligned with the reports he'd been receiving. The humans weren't violent. They weren't rebellious. They were just quietly, politely, insufferably non-compliant. You're saying, Draxon began slowly, that Earth's entire strategy was to let us occupy you while you stole our technology and made us dependent on your infrastructure. I'm saying we turned your invasion into a very expensive exchange program, where you paid all the costs and we got all the benefits. Your troops are happier, better fed, and more culturally enriched than they've ever been. Meanwhile, we've jumped our technology forward by about 500 years. Everybody wins. Except we don't have control of Earth. Did you ever? Jack smiled. You have ships in orbit and troops on the ground, but you don't control our governments, our economy, or our people. You can't even control your own soldiers because half of them would rather be eating pizza than patrolling. That's not an occupation, Warmaster. That's tourism with extra steps. Draxon stood and walked to the window. Below he could see Geneva continuing its daily life. Humans walking, talking, laughing. A few Concordance soldiers mingling with civilians, one of them accepting what looked like a sandwich from a street vendor. It looked peaceful. It looked friendly. It looked like failure. What do you want? Draxon asked finally. I want you to meet someone. Earth's actual negotiating team. Because yes, Warmaster, we've been negotiating this whole time. You just didn't realize it. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a conference room in the United Nations building that had been hastily cleared and secured. Draxon arrived with a full security detail, expecting to meet Earth's leaders and finally have a proper military surrender. What he got instead was a diverse group of humans representing various governments, corporations, and what appeared to be a very cheerful woman from the International Chamber of Commerce. Warmaster Draxon, said Ambassador Williams, who'd been orchestrating this whole mess from behind the scenes while Jack played friendly liaison. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Draxon remained standing. I came to accept your surrender. We're not surrendering, Williams replied calmly. We're negotiating a mutually beneficial arrangement. There's a difference. I have a fleet in orbit. You have a fleet in orbit that needs constant maintenance from Earth-based engineers, supplies from Earth-based manufacturers, and fuel from Earth-based refineries. You also have troops who, according to our latest surveys, have a 73% approval rating for wanting to stay on Earth permanently. She slid a folder across the table. These are the terms we're proposing. Draxon looked at the folder like it might explode. Terms? For Earth's integration into the Galactic Concordance as an autonomous trade partner rather than a conquered territory. It's better for everyone involved. Trust me. Against his better judgment, Draxon opened the folder. What he found inside made him sit down involuntarily. The proposal was comprehensive, detailed, and utterly audacious. Earth would maintain complete sovereignty over its territory and governments. In exchange, Earth would provide the Concordance with access to its manufacturing capabilities, cultural exports, and certain technological innovations. The Concordance would provide Earth with access to galactic trade networks, advanced technology licenses, and defense agreements. It was a trade deal. They'd turned an invasion into a trade deal. "You're insane," Draxon said. "We prefer ambitious," replied the woman from the Chamber of Commerce. "Now, let's talk about the financial aspects. Your occupation has cost the Concordance approximately 40 billion credits over the past 3 months. Our analysis suggests continued military occupation would cost another 200 billion credits annually, not including the therapy costs for troops experiencing cultural shock." "Therapy costs?" "Your soldiers are very stressed, Warmaster. Military life is hard, but that's beside the point. If you accept our proposal, those costs disappear. Instead, you gain access to Earth's economy, which is currently valued at about 90 trillion credits and growing. We're very good at making money." A human in a nice suit who'd been introduced as representing Earth's technology sector chimed in. "We're also prepared to share our reverse-engineered versions of your technology. Not the military applications, obviously, but the civilian ones. Improved power generation, medical devices, communication systems. We'll license them to Concordance corporations at very reasonable rates." "You want to sell us our own technology?" Draxon's voice climbed an octave. "Technically, it's our version of your technology, which makes it legally distinct intellectual property. We checked with 17 different galactic law firms. It's completely above board." Draxon looked around the table at the smiling human faces and realized with absolute certainty that these were the most terrifying opponents he'd ever encountered. They hadn't fought him with weapons. They'd fought him with contracts, culture, and capitalism. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Ambassador Williams' smile never wavered. "Then you continue your occupation. We continue our passive resistance. Your costs spiral out of control, and eventually the Concordance High Council recalls you for failing to establish profitable control of Earth. Meanwhile, we continue reverse engineering your technology, and in about 2 years we'll be building our own starships, at which point we'll apply for Concordance membership as an independent species, and probably get accepted because we'll have the technology and the economic leverage. That's blackmail. That's negotiation. There's a difference." She pushed another document across the table. "Option 2. You accept our proposal. Earth becomes an autonomous trade partner. Your troops who want to stay get immigration visas, and you personally become our ambassador to the Concordance. It's a promotion, really. Much better than explaining to High Command how you lost an occupation to hospitality." Draxon picked up the second document. "Why would I become your ambassador?" "Because you're competent, professional, and unlike Commander Vrelk, you understand military strategy well enough to know when you've been outmaneuvered. We need someone representing Earth's interests who understands how galactic politics work. You need a job that doesn't involve explaining this disaster to your superiors." She paused. "Also, the position comes with a very generous salary, full diplomatic immunity, and a residence in Geneva with an excellent view of the mountains. You're trying to bribe me. We're offering you a career opportunity that makes better use of your skills than occupying a planet that doesn't want to be occupied. Think of it as a lateral move with significantly better benefits." For a long moment, Draxon said nothing. He'd spent 60 years conquering worlds, establishing order, building the Concordance's empire through military might. He'd never once considered that conquest could simply be made irrelevant by making the conquered people indispensable. Humans hadn't beaten him with superior weapons or tactics. They'd beaten him with economics, culture, and the kind of strategic patience that took generations to develop. They'd turned an invasion into a business opportunity. It was brilliant. It was infuriating. It was, he had to admit, exactly what he would have done in their position. "I need to consult with High Command," he said finally. "Of course. Take your time. We're not going anywhere." Williams stood and extended her hand. "Oh, and Warmaster? While you're deciding, you should try Subcommander Trellix's fusion tacos. They're really very good." 6 months later, Earth's status was officially reclassified from conquered territory to autonomous trade partner of the Galactic Concordance. The announcement caused a brief controversy in galactic politics, but it was quickly overshadowed by Earth's entry into the interstellar market. Humans, it turned out, were terrifyingly good at capitalism on a galactic scale. Within 3 months, Earth corporations had established trade relationships with 47 different worlds. Within 6 months, human entertainment media was the third most consumed content in Concordance space. Within a year, Earth's economy had grown by 300%, and 5 human languages had been added to the official Concordance translation database. Commander Vrelk, officially retired from military service, opened a bed and breakfast in Vermont that became inexplicably popular with alien tourists seeking an authentic Earth experience. His reviews on the Galactic Travel Network averaged 4.8 stars, with most complaints centering on his insistence that guests help with the morning coffee service. Sub-Commander Trellix's food truck empire expanded to 73 locations across 5 star systems. He'd franchised the concept and was currently in talks to publish a cookbook titled Tacos, a love story in fusion cuisine. He'd also been featured in 3 different cooking shows and had a line of signature spices that were selling exceptionally well. Officer Khress released her first album of power ballad covers that went platinum on 4 worlds. Critics described her voice as hauntingly beautiful if you ignore the fact that it's produced by a vocal synthesizer designed for military communications. She was currently on tour and had been nominated for a Galactic Music Award in the category of Most Unexpected Career Change. Warmaster Draxon, now Ambassador Draxon, maintained an office in Geneva and a reputation for being the toughest negotiator in the Concordance diplomatic corps. He'd successfully brokered 3 trade agreements, prevented 2 wars, and established a framework for peaceful first contact with newly discovered species. He'd also developed a taste for coffee, which he would never admit to anyone. And Jack Riley remained exactly what he'd always been, a mid-level Earth diplomat with a coffee addiction and a dangerous amount of competence. He'd received several offers for promotions, prestigious positions, and even a book deal. He'd turned them all down. "I like my job," he told Ambassador Williams over coffee one morning. "It's interesting. You orchestrated one of the most successful non-violent resistance campaigns in human history and turned an alien invasion into a trade partnership. You could be teaching at universities, consulting for governments, living in luxury." "Yeah, but then I'd have to attend faculty meetings and board presentations. This is way more fun." He glanced at his datapad. "Speaking of which, we've got another situation developing." "What kind of situation?" "Long-range sensors picked up another alien fleet approaching Earth. Different species, probably heard about the whole Concordance thing and want to try their luck. ETA is about 3 weeks. Williams sighed. "Do they know what happened to the last group that tried to invade us?" "Apparently not. Their intercepted communications suggest they think we're an easy target because we didn't fight back last time." "Poor bastards." Williams smiled. "Same playbook?" "Same playbook. I've already ordered 5,000 welcome baskets and scheduled a meeting with the tourism board. Figure we might as well be prepared." Jack finished his coffee and stood, grabbing his briefcase. "Oh, and I contacted Vrelk. He's offering a special discount for any alien invaders who want to book rooms at his bed and breakfast. Says the irony is good for business. We're going to end up with every failed invasion fleet in the galaxy running businesses on Earth, aren't we?" "Probably. But hey, it's good for the economy, and nobody has to die. I'd call that a win." Jack headed for the door, then paused. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "What? Somewhere out there, there's a species planning to invade Earth, studying the records, analyzing what went wrong with the Concordance occupation. And they're going to come here thinking they've learned from those mistakes, that they'll be smarter, tougher, more prepared. And? Jack's grin was absolutely wicked. "And we're going to teach them about timeshares." 3 weeks later, when the new alien fleet arrived in Earth orbit with weapons primed and demands for surrender, they were greeted by a cheerful transmission from Earth's diplomatic corps. "Welcome to Earth. We've prepared information packets about our culture, economy, and several excellent investment opportunities. We've also taken the liberty of pre-filling some of your arrival documentation to save time. Can we interest you in a complimentary coffee tasting while we discuss the terms of your visit?" In his office, Jack Riley poured his first coffee of what promised to be a very entertaining day. The datapad on his desk showed the alien fleet's flagship, weapons powering down in what he recognized as confusion. Humans, he reflected, had figured out something that most species missed. You didn't have to be the strongest to win. You just had to be too annoying to conquer and too profitable to destroy. And humanity had turned that strategy into an art form. His communicator beeped. It was Ambassador Draxon. "Riley, I'm watching the new fleet's approach. Please tell me you're not going to do to them what you did to us." "Would I do that?" "Yes, you absolutely would. I know how you operate now." Jack laughed. "Relax, Ambassador. We're just going to offer them some hospitality. Maybe introduce them to pizza. Show them the sights. I'm sure they'll make excellent neighbors once they've been here a few months." "That's what I'm afraid of. Trust me, Draxon. This is going to be fun." Jack disconnected and turned to look out his window at the city below, where humans and aliens mingled in streets lined with shops and restaurants. Somewhere out there, Trellix was probably already planning a new fusion recipe incorporating whatever cuisine these new visitors brought with them. Vrelk was likely preparing guest rooms. Khress was possibly writing a song about first contact. And above, in orbit, a new group of would-be conquerors was about to learn the most important lesson in the galaxy: never underestimate a species that weaponizes friendship. Earth hadn't just survived first contact with an alien civilization, they'd turned it into a business model. And business, Jack thought as he raised his coffee cup in a silent toast to the new arrivals, was very good.